Microphones for the many, okay? Thank you very much. Thanks for all being here today, and thank you for your support for Labour in this campaign. This campaign is reaching every single part of the country. I've been to many, many constituencies already, and I'll be going to many, many more in the last 2.5 weeks of this campaign. We've got 2.5 weeks to get people registered to vote within the next couple of days, and then to make sure that those votes are cast for Labour on December the 12th. 9 million people, as of yesterday, are still not registered to vote. So please put all the efforts you can into giving people that chance and that choice on December the 12th. If they're not registered, they won't be able to exercise their right to vote, to get rid of a government committed to austerity and the inequality and impoverishment of the people of this country. I've just come from Sheffield this morning, and yesterday, as you know, we had the debate on Question Time, which I actually enjoyed very much indeed. Because I'm very, very happy to take questions from anybody on anything, anytime, any place. We have nothing to hide. And this morning, I went to a warehouse in Sheffield, alongside Forge Masters Steelworks. That warehouse is owned and run by Amazon. Outside the warehouse there was a line of white vans, self-employed white van drivers hoping to get some delivery to do that day from the Amazon warehouse, if the Amazon warehouse had deliveries for them to do. They were queuing up, hoping for a day's work. The people in there packing the goods and sending them out were on 0-hours contracts. They spend their days looking at their mobile phone, working out if they're going to get a job or not that day. You'll have read from history and from older people what it was like to work on the docks in Liverpool or London or Hull or Felixstowe or Harwich, when dock workers had to go down to the dock every morning and see if an employer would offer them a day's wages. Building workers who used to queue up in Birmingham or London or many other places every morning, hoping a contractor would give them a day's labour, and then at the end of the day, drop them back to wherever they picked them up from. Maybe get a job the next day, maybe not. Totally insecure, but very, very hard work. And of course, those that stood up to organise workers on the docks or the building trade to be in the union didn't get work. They were discriminated against by very powerful employers, in the sense that the employer controlled the livelihood of those workers. Union action, the labour movement, changed a lot of that and gave people rights at work and some degree of regulation in their workplace. But the growth of 0-hours contracts, which now affect nearly 1 million people across this country, in reality, it might not be as uncomfortable sitting at home looking at your mobile phone as it was queuing up outside waiting for work. But the principle is exactly the same. You're completely disempowered. You're completely in the hands of an employer who might like you or dislike you, may or may not give you work. And you have no control over that situation whatsoever. So I was very proud to be down there this morning outside the Amazon warehouse with our friends in the GMB, who are doing their best to organise Amazon workers to join the GMB, to end the contract culture of 0 hours and give them rights at work. Now, I support the GMB and all other unions that are trying to organise people at the workplace, of course I do. But I also think we need government action, we need parliamentary action to change things. That is where the election of a Labour government comes in. Bear in mind that one of the richest people in the world is the chief executive of Amazon, not just a billionaire, a multi-billionaire. And the tax arrangements of Amazon and many other companies are not so much not transparent as and even opaque or even completely hidden from view, are that many of these companies operate in this country, make a lot of money in this country, then transfer their tax liability, as they would call it, to a low tax regime somewhere else. I just make it very, very clear. Under a Labour government, there's going to be a few things done differently. One, we will end 0 hours contracts. End of story. There will be no more 0 hours contracts. There will be guaranteed. Secondly, every worker will have full rights at work from day one of their employment, not having to go through these very lengthy probationary periods where they cannot access employment tribunals or anything else. And then, for the companies concerned, yes, we want the work, yes, we want the jobs, yes, we recognise that retail habits have changed and warehouse facilities are a factor in our economy. But we also recognise that companies making money in this country should also pay tax in this country. So we will end the non-dom status. We will tax people at the basis where they're making the money, and the ideas that it's clever to avoid and evade tax and place yourself in a tax haven somewhere else. With John McDonnell as Chancellor, those days are going to be over. We're going to tax people. This is not, for the avoidance of doubt, anti-business. Because if you're a small business operating on a high street, a small manufacturer, a small artisan workshop or warehouse, you're paying your taxes, others are not. And so we're not going to be raising taxes for the small businesses. We are going to be raising corporation tax for the biggest businesses in order to pay for the social changes that we believe are so necessary in our society. And I'm very proud of our manifesto. I'm very proud of the grey book that goes alongside it. We have a fully costed manifesto which will change the lives of a lot of people in this country. And I'm very proud of the work that's gone into all of that. And I thank all the people for that. But this election is all about really the future and hope for young people in our society. There are many things in our manifesto, and I'm really grateful to Young Labour, to Momentum, to all the unions, to everybody else that's made a contribution to our manifesto. And so, whilst brilliant people in our office and our teams wrote the manifesto itself, in reality the ideas came from the real experts. People working in factories, people's care workers, nurses, doctors, teachers, teaching assistants, road sweepers. Everybody made a contribution to our manifesto. It's a people-powered manifesto for a people-powered party in a people-powered campaign to win this election. Cat Smith and I tried to get an amendment through Parliament on the very last day when the election was being called. And we were supporting the call for an election because no deal had been taken off the table. We put down an amendment to include votes at 16 in this. We were not successful at doing that, but I'll be proud to lead a Labour government that gives votes at 16. And I'll also be proud to lead a government that establishes a national education service that properly funds our education system. Because it can't be right that children that get preschool nursery facilities get it on the basis of, to some extent, need, to some extent, of parental ability to pay, but it is a patchwork across the whole country. All the evidence shows that children that get nursery opportunities do better later on and better later on in life. Let's end the postcode lottery on educational achievement and give every young child a real chance, a real achievement. Let's have real parity of esteem, real equality of opportunity, whether you undertake vocational education when you go to college and go on to do advanced apprenticeships and get great experience and qualifications that go with it alongside academic education in universities. A society needs qualified practical engineers just as much as it needs scientists and others within our society. They're both part and parcel of our lives and our society. And the short-sightedness of charging university fees of £9,000 a year, the short-sightedness of ending the nurse bursary, the short-sightedness of ending the support system for people to be at university means that we have 40,000 nurse vacancies within the NHS. We have a massive shortage of doctors, and every company all over the country tells me how difficult it is for them to recruit skilled workers because we're not training enough people, we're not giving young people those opportunities. And so our National Education Service will ensure our schools are properly funded, will ensure that our apprenticeships are effective, good quality, and people are properly paid whilst they're doing it. Because we need those people for the future. We need to give young people that sense of hope and opportunity for the future, rather than being told, if you want to go to uni, you're going to get into debt. If you want to get good healthcare in the future, think about going private. The idea that the public realm is somehow or other permanently in retreat, whilst we are the 5th richest country in the world. Our manifesto, the whole thread through the manifesto, is about changing the inequalities and injustice that exist within our society. And so we will also raise wages, because people need a wage rise. Ever since austerity came in 2010, there's been a wage freeze for most of that time in the public sector. There's been a wage freeze in a lot of the private sector. The spending power of most working class communities is 25% less than it was a decade ago. And so I have no compunction whatsoever in saying we will introduce a £10 an hour living wage for all workers, including young workers, to end that discrimination against young workers. Because this election is an election about hope for the future. And I want to say thank you to all those that have joined the Labour Party, that have come in and registered to vote, and are doing such a fantastic job in this campaign at the present time. The campaign is being framed as the Brexit election. In reality, of course, that is a factor in it, but it's also about health, about housing, about education, about environment, and about hope for the future. Our government will give people a choice for the future, a choice of the kind of government they want, a choice of our relationship with Europe in the future. But what we will not do is allow this country to fall into the arms of a so-called free trade arrangement with the United States, when the United States government itself has made it very clear that any trade relationship with Britain in the future will require American companies to have access to our public services, including our National Health Service. I just make it very, very clear, for the want of any doubt anywhere in this country or around the world, under Labour, our NHS is not for sale. Because our NHS is one of our proudest achievements, the principle of free healthcare at the point of need. None of us want to be ill, none of us want our friends, family or relatives to be sick or ill. But the difference between here and the USA, well, the USA, just like here, nobody wants to be sick or ill. But when you go to see the doctor, when you go to the A&E department, you're not worried about your bank balance, you're worried only about your health, and that's how it should be. But if we carry on underfunding our National Health Service, underfunding our mental health services, underfunding our social care, then people will either go without or be forced into private provision. Well, under us, we will invest fully in the NHS, fully in social care, and fully in our mental health services. And I'm proud of what our manifesto says about all of that and so much more. The injustices of universal credit, the injustices of the way in which young people are treated in our society, and often their needs are ignored, is something that has to be addressed. So it's not just about funding schools properly, it's also about the after-school clubs, it's also about having sufficient teaching assistants in schools to help those that need special help and assistance, and reducing the numbers of students that are excluded, often because the school can't cope with the special needs of some pupils. We have to be there for all pupils all of the time. And we need a youth service worthy of the name around the country. How depressing it is to grow up in a society where people are always talking what it was like. Yes, there were those libraries, they were open all the time. Yes, that swimming pool used to be really cheap and open 7 days a week. Yes, those sports facilities used to be affordable. Oh yeah, we had a really good youth centre down the road. When you go down a high street in some parts of the country and all you see is closed and boarded up shops and closed public facilities, and you realise what the price of austerity is. The price of austerity is not paid by the billionaires who've had tax write-offs and tax relief over the past 10 years. The price of austerity is paid by working class communities all over this country with the loss of resources, facilities, hope and opportunities. Our job in this election is to do it differently, saying no more austerity, tax fairly in order to pay for the services that are needed for everybody else, to unleash the hope, the experience, the optimism of the next generation to bring about a future that's good for all of us. And I'm very proud of what our manifesto says in all of those regards. The greatest issue facing our planet is obviously the climate emergency. And I was very proud on May the 1st to propose to Parliament a motion to call on the UK Parliament to be the first in the world to declare a climate emergency. I proposed the motion on behalf of the Labour Party, and I was very proud to do that. Michael Gove got up to oppose it on behalf of the government. He spoke in great and enormous length, he always does, and two things came out of his speech. One was, he doesn't like me one little bit. I don't do personal, so I'll say no more about it. But he also had no arguments against it. He couldn't really summon up an argument against it. And so we did declare it. But declaring a climate emergency is one thing, dealing with it is another. And so we put a lot of work into this. A lot of people have put a lot of work into this. The Green Industrial Revolution, very similar to the Green New Deal being produced by AOC and Bernie Sanders and others in the area. And we're in touch with them and working with them on our plans and our proposals. Broadly speaking, it goes like this. If we don't get to zero emissions, net zero emissions very, very quickly, then we're contributing to global warming in exactly the same way as other countries are. And so our manifesto is very determined and very ambitious in that respect. But it's also about how we don't use it as a means of destroying jobs, we use it as a means of creating jobs and economic opportunities. Think about it. If you're retrofitting homes in order to make them sustainable, and make them energy efficient, there's a lot of jobs involved in that, a lot of very high skilled jobs involved in that, both in fitting and in manufacturing. If you're producing electric vehicles, electric trains, if you're electrifying lines, then there's a lot of very skilled jobs involved in that. If you're rolling out broadband across the whole country, free broadband for everybody across the whole country, you're opening up the opportunity of new employment chances in areas of the country that are remote and have been left behind for a very long time. And if you're generating electricity by wind, wave and solar, you've got to manufacture the wind turbines. You've got to build the wave-generating power stations, such as the Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon, and you've got to manufacture the solar panels. The opportunities and the chances of all this are absolutely enormous. It's not going to be done on its own by the private sector. They will never do that on their own. It is about public investment, and it is about providing the opportunities for new companies to develop as well, to develop all of this. We calculate around 300,000 green energy jobs will come in, and we will be introducing green apprenticeships so that the future is one where we protect and sustain our world, but we also make sure that there are jobs there, efficient jobs there for the future, that are decent, well-paid and high-skilled. And I look forward to leading a Labour government that on the world stage will be a voice for climate sustainability, will be a voice for fair trade around the world so that we don't inadvertently export pollution by having tough regulations ourselves, but importing goods from places where there are no regulations at all, knowing full well the damage we're doing to that environment. And so a Labour government's voice on the world stage will be one to say that the biggest threat facing this planet is actually climate change, Therefore, we have to do everything we can to recognise the contribution made by industrial countries to the climate emergency and recognise our responsibility to lead the way in changing the way that we do things. There are environmental refugees around the world, just as there are refugees from human rights abuses and wars. We have to be sensible, realistic about this. I want to lead a Labour government that will go in all of those directions. Because our job is to face the future with confidence. Our job is to face the future with the policies that I believe we've developed, which will meet that future. We have now just 2.5 weeks until the election itself takes place. Are we to go down the road of more austerity, more tax giveaways to the richest? There's 150 billionaires in Britain, and so far only 50 of them is funding the Conservative Party. I don't know what's happened to the other 100. They obviously must be incredibly mean people. They should be funding the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is certainly funding them. Unfortunately, all my fundraising appeals and all my fundraising efforts on behalf of the party haven't brought 1 penny in from any billionaire, and I'm really sorry about that. But I'm very proud that the average donation given by our supporters and the public is £25. I'm more proud of £25 from people that want to Labour government than it is for them. And so, when we go out there campaigning, it is about asking people how they're going to vote. It is, of course, asking them what they know about our policies, but it's also engaging in that debate and that conversation, because that's how we develop the policies we've got, and that's how, in government, we'll sustain that government with all the attacks and all the pressures it's going to get from those that wish to retain their special status and their privilege in society. Our manifesto is about the empowerment of ordinary people, unleashing that sense of hope amongst young people and the optimism that goes with it, and recognise those that went before, that won the right to vote, that won the right to free education, that won the right for women to vote, that won the anti-racist legislation that successive Labour governments have passed. A Labour government that will deliver for all people in the future is a prize within our grasp. But it's not going to be handed to us on a plate. You've seen the attacks we're getting in some of the billionaire-owned media at the moment. You've seen all that stuff that's thrown at us. But I tell you what, don't do personal, don't reply, just relentlessly go out there with the policies we've got, the determination we've got to put them into operation, and then, in the cold misery of a wet November and December, you'll get a red Christmas and a great spring with a Labour government.
We are in the middle of a general election and he's on the campaign trail, but I've invited all the speakers to come on the stage, and we're going to take a selfie with all of you. You're already standing. I was going to ask you to stand, but you're already standing. So if Jeremy and the rest of us have our backs to the crowd, and I want you to all say...
No disrespect, it's only briefly one. Is he a great singer?
Labour government by Christmas!
Just don't knock on the doors, okay?